im se svima, i malima i velikima, i bogatima i siromašnima, i slobodnjacima i robovima, dade žig na njihovu desnu ruku ili na čela njihova, te da nitko ne može ništa kupiti ili prodati.
Pozdrav dragi narode, dobri došli u još jednu epizodu Slobodni. Moje ime je Andrija Klarić i evo danas imamo ponovno jednu zanimljivu temu. Naime, svi znamo i svi smo čuli što je 5G. Postavlja se pitanje da li uistinu svi znamo što je to. Puno priča kruži o tome što 5G nam donosi, koliko je on potreban, koliko je on koristan, koliko je siguran. To je nešto što je nova tehnologija, o čemu tek trebamo razgovarati, a nešto što nas trenutno aktualno i zanima jer se implementira u cijelom svijetu, pa tako i u Hrvatskoj. Današnja gošća je upravo stručnjak u toj temi i govorit ćemo o tome što je 5G, kakve razlike između pete generacije i četvrte i treće, što nam donosi, kakvu korist, a kakvu potencijalnu možda štetu imamo. Gospođa dolazi naravno opet kao i obično u mojim emisijama, iz Švedske u ovom slučaju i ona je u nekoliko zadnjih godina upravo se bavila ovom temom. Od sada nadalje će ovaj razgovor ići na engleskom jeziku. Hello Mona, welcome to our show in Croatia.
Thank you very much.
Well, can you please, for our audience here, say some words about yourself and about your work?
Well, I'm the founder of the Swedish Radiation Protection Foundation, which is a foundation that informs about health risks from wireless radiation, and we also give advice about how to better protect you against those health risks. We are science-based, and we also report about new scientific findings. And we also, during the last years, has also started to conduct scientific research, mainly on health effects from 5G exposure to base stations, together with Dr. Lennart Hardell in Sweden. Before I started this foundation, I was an investigative journalist specialized on this topic, and I'm the author of 2 books in Swedish.
Well, great. Then you are right person for this topic. Well, for our audience who doesn't know much about this, please, can you explain us what is exactly 5G and what is the difference between 5G and what we have right now or we had before?
Well, the main difference and the main reason for a strong concern about among many scientists that are experts in this field is that 5G will produce much more radiation exposure, and that has been expressed in the 5G appeal signed by many scientists and medical doctors and sent to the European Commission already from in 2017. They strongly urged the European Commission to halt the 5G rollout because of the massive increase in radiation exposure and the potential harmful effects on humans and the environment. So that's the main reason. Furthermore, 5G will entail new exposure to new frequencies, higher frequencies, and also to millimeter waves. And also the concern of scientists is that 5G is rolled out without any studies whatsoever having studied the health effects from this kind of radiation.
Great. Then we have to talk about details about it. Can you explain what 5G additional needs to be implemented For example, in a city like Zagreb? What is additional equipment necessary to implement it?
Well, when they implement 5G, they do it in connection together with 4G plus. And what they do is that they install a massive amount of new antennas that are larger and that are emitting much higher radiation, and that is because they want to achieve faster connectivity. So they do it, and in Sweden, for instance, in Stockholm, where we have performed measurements ever since the start of the rollout of 5G, we have measured terribly increasing levels of radiation to which people are exposed to. The levels in the cities where 5G has been rolled out at 3.5 gigahertz frequency are terribly high, and they cause health effects in people very rapidly. And many are complaining about the well-known effects of this radiation as sleeping problems, headache, chest pain, heart problems, tinnitus, nosebleeds, dizziness, and difficulties to concentrate and exhaustion.
And also you made some investigation concerning that. You published some study who was made one example what really 5G towers are doing to people who are sleeping or living close to it.
Yes, together with Dr. Lennart Hardell, we have published 3 case studies on people that have had a 5G base station and 4G base station close to their apartments. And all those 3 case studies show that the installation of the 5G and the activation of the 5G caused quite immediate ill health symptoms among the studied persons. They get sleeping problems, headache, tinnitus, nosebleeds. They feel extremely tired. They have heart arrhythmia. They have all sorts of symptoms that has been long for 5 decades described as symptoms, effects of microwave radiation in occupational exposure. So we have published those 3 case studies, and it's very shocking that those are the only one so far conducted on health effects from 5G exposure, while people are forcibly exposed to this kind of radiation in their own homes and in their workplaces and in the children's schools, and there has been none studies to show that this 5G radiation is safe for human health.
As I understood, you are sure that this 5G, this microwave syndrome coming from these towers, because after they left their apartments, all the symptoms are gone. And that happened.
That's correct. That's correct. And also measurements show very high levels of microwave exposure after the installment of the 5G base station. We had readings of over 1 million to 3 million microwatts per square meter, and that should be compared to the levels that has already before the 5G rollout being connected to health effects, and that is from 100 to 1,000 microwatts per square meter. So these levels are far beyond those levels that are known to cause health problems in people living close to mobile phone masts and mobile phone base stations. And also we have independent scientists and medical doctors who have for many years called for very much lower exposure to the public, and that the people should not be exposed to more than 10 to 100 microwatts per square meter, and that should be compared to the over 1 million microwatts per square meter we are now measuring in people's apartment that are living close to 5G base stations.
And also it's important how long they are exposed to this microwave.
Yes, it's important, but in our case studies, we show that it didn't take very long for people to start experience very severe ill health symptoms after the 5G base station was enabled. In two of the cases, the symptoms started rather immediately within 1 or 2 days.
Okay, I spoke with somebody who told me that exposure to this non-ionizing radiation for long term has the same effects like exposing to the ionizing radiation in the short-term effects.
Well, what we see in the scientific results is that this radiation, just like the ionizing radiation, causes DNA damage and oxidative stress. We also know from quite a lot of studies now that this radiation causes cancer. This radiation can cause cancer after long-term exposure. So, and in 2011, the World Health Organization's cancer organization, the IARC, classified this radiation as possibly carcinogenic in group 2B.
Okay, but there is also regulation. There is an International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. That's the European Commission. And they bring some new recommendations from 2020. And these recommendations are way higher than before.
That's correct. They are in Europe. The European Commission recommended to the EU member states to adopt the ICNIRP, the so-called this Commission's recommendations and guidelines from 1998. So those have been in place for over 20 years now, and those limits do not protect against any other health effects than acute thermal effects. That is, when the radiation is so intense that it warms up your body with 1 degree, within 1 degree. And that is based on animal studies that have shown those effects within less than an hour. And so those recommendations and limits that has been in place in most countries in Europe during the last 20 years only protect humans against short-term heating effects, nothing else. No effects on the brain, no effects on the behavior, no cancer effects, no DNA damage, no oxidative stress, no reproduction effects. So we are clearly very unprotected against all the many hazards that the science has shown that this radiation is capable of doing, far below those ICNIRP limits. And the reason why the European Commission and the various countries around Europe have maintained those ICNIRP limits is because they are very important to the industry. They protect the industry, but they don't protect human health. So clearly, the European Commission has favorized the protection of industry ahead of the protection of the public health and the environment. And in 2020, the ICNIRP they recommended even higher limits that are even worse than those from 1998 that are already in place. And that is clearly an adoption to the needs of the industry ahead of the 5G rollout, because 5G will emit very, very high levels of exposure. So yet again, this is another example of ICNIRP being a front and a protection organization for the industry and not for public health. And those ICNIRP limits are severely criticized by the majority of experts in this field. For instance, 260 scientists have signed the EMF scientist appeal, arguing that there are numerous studies showing health effects well below the ICNIRP limits, and that those limits need to be lowered in order to protect human health.
That means that industry needs a level of radiation because this new technology, 5G, doesn't work without this. Am I right?
Yes, you are right, because one example of that is that one of the leading providers of infrastructure technology for the 5G is the Swedish company Ericsson. And in 2018, they held a presentation that clearly told us that if lower limits than those recommended by ICNIRP were to be applied and were to be maintained, for instance, Switzerland, Italy and Belgium has had lower limits, 100 times lower limits than the ICNIRP limits, then it would be impossible or very difficult to roll out the 5G according to the industry's plans.
Okay, as I understand now, there is a conflict of interest, developing of industry and protecting of health. You are very high critic of this ICNIRP organization. Why? Is there any connection between them and industry, or are they only independent experts?
They are clearly not independent, because you can say if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, you can be rather sure that it is a duck. So when you, over the years, clearly tell that scientific results have not shown any health effects below the ICNIRP limits, you are clearly lying, and you are lying to protect the telecommunications industry. Furthermore, there are numerous examples of members of ICNIRP that have ties to the telecommunications and the power industries. So there are clearly scientists within the ICNIRP members that have set those limits, that are funded by the industry. So this has been shown in various reports, among others in an in-depth report published in 2020, commissioned by two European Parliament members, Michel Rivasi and Klaus Buchner. And that's a very interesting report for people to study, or if you want to dig deeper into this issue, because though they clearly lay out evidence that ICNIRP is not independent from industry.
You say funded. These people are funded by industry. How are they funding them? Are they funding their activities, their research, or some other way?
They are funded to their research from this industry. And they consequently also produce scientific results that are favorable to industry. We know from several investigations that studies funded by the telecommunications industry have a huge tendency of producing or presenting results that are very favorable to the industry. And the opposite is true for independent scientific research. The independent scientific results clearly show in the majority of cases that there are health risks from this radiation.
Well, I have to notice that I see pattern here. Pattern what we saw last few years. Whenever somebody who has a financial interest in something funding research, then results are coming in their favor. Of course,
Yes.
it's not ethical, but it seems that we have again more or less fight for independent researchers who can objectively made evaluation. But anyhow, let's go further. With this 5G technology, this is necessary for the implementing a new, as we hear, smart cities, smart vehicles, and other things. Can you tell us something about this smart idea, what they are now promoting in Europe and in the world?
Well, it will be a terrible society because we will be people all over the world, or in those cities where they are implementing this, will be forcibly exposed to very high and steadily increasing levels of harmful radiation. So the smart cities, how smart is it really if it harms the public health? I think it's very unsmart. It's not smart at all to install a technology clearly only from the industry needs of selling more products and new technology. That's the driving factor behind. That's a major driving factor behind those so-called smart cities. But it will be disastrous for the human health and for the environment. And we should also take into consideration that the most vulnerable in the society are the children, those who are most vulnerable to this kind of radiation, because when you expose them to this form of radiation, their nervous system is still developing and very sensitive. So it's a very dark development, and we should not call this smart. We should call this for the right name. It's unsmart to harm public health.
Well, I hope that we can agree that technology is necessary for development of the mankind. But okay, we have to think about the future. And tell me, is this 5G technology necessary to make a further development in our technology for the good of the mankind?
No, absolutely not. It's the contrary. However, the industry believes it's necessary for them. So the driving force, the driving factor behind this development, this is disastrous development, is the industry's needs to steadily sell new technology. So, for instance, when you have an infrastructure provider as Ericsson, who is world leading on infrastructure in 5G, when they have sold out and filled the market with 3G, they need to sell in new technology as 4G. And when they have filled the market with 4G, they need to sell in new technology like 5G and 6G and so forth. So that's the driving factor. We, the public and the public health, need safe technology. I'm not against technology. I think the internet is great and the computer technology is great, but we need to use it wisely and in a safe way, and that is through cable connection. That's safe. Nobody has ever told us that cable connection and connectivity is unsafe. So let's let's develop new technology in a safe way, and don't let the industry control what the risks are and not. That should be independently evaluated from scientists without ties to the industry.
I have to ask one logic question. Logic question is that these people who are in the power, who are making this decision, they also have children, and they are also exposed to this radiation. Why would they do this kind of exposure for themselves and for their health?
Because I think there is a culture within those industries that you don't talk about the risks, because they have, I believe they have special people within the organization who sees through, who guards against inconvenient truths about this radiation. So most people who work in those industries are not aware, they are not told about the health risks, because the information is filtered to them. They are not reached by the information. And particularly during the last years, we have observed that during the last 7 years, that also the media is heavily censoring information about health risks from this kind of radiation, so that only the industry positive view is put forward to decision makers and the public. And furthermore, the industry controls all major expert evaluations at the most important organizations, such as the European Commission, the World Health Organization, and the various countries' expert evaluation. For instance, in Sweden, the Swedish Radiation Safety Authority, that is clearly dominated by ICNIRP experts, who every year produce an expert evaluation telling the decision makers and the public that there are no problems, and no science have shown that this radiation is harmful to public health, although the evidence for such health risks is steadily increasing.
Let's remind me on something. You know, lots of people in the last 3 years, I have to also compare it, receive lots of information from the media. And if industry financing media, they're financing propaganda and promotion, not really information. And as you claim, it seems to that in this case is the same way. Media is highly funded from the side of corporative sector, and they are mostly talking about this kind of things in a positive way, promoting that is good for our development. And they are not aware of possible threats what are coming from the development.
That's correct, and that has been a very clear tendency, a very big change I've noticed during the last 8 years. Since I've been working with this field, and I had good relations with many journalists within the mainstream media during my first 10 years working on this issue, the change during the last 8 years is dramatic. It's propaganda for the 5G, for the telecommunications industry, and clearly censoring inconvenient results, showing health risks, and also smearing those organizations and persons who put forward and speak about the radiation health risks, such as my organization and me myself, and also Dr. Leonard Hardell.
Well, can we try to imagine? We have in one case in Croatia, there is a big developer, very good one, developing of the new industry in production electric car. And they just received a grant from European Commission of 180 million for developing self-driving taxis. For as I understand, for driving self-driving taxis, we need implementation of 5G all the way in the cities. Am I right?
I believe so. I believe so. So why would you need self-driving taxis? What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing, of course, but I just want to make it clear, because we are, they're talking to us that these self-driving taxis will bring us lots of advantages. But nobody is mentioning that without implementation of 5G technology, they cannot drive these self-driving taxis in the cities, especially, for example, in Zagreb, where I'm placed. That means the first...
That is probably so, yes.
Sorry.
Yes, but this is clearly a sign that the industry constantly needs to introduce new technology to maintain their turnover and their profits.
Okay.
And we should, as a society, we should not let the industry decide this much over the environment in our cities and what people are exposed to. This has gone very far out of hand. It's only the industry's perspective that is ruling what is happening in society today. I think public health should be, environmental care should be very much more put forward. And we shouldn't let industry decide what are the health risks of their own technology as they are today.
Well, I saw lots of videos and pictures where the people, regular people, trying to cut down these 5G towers and they're destroying them. What these people think of? You know, I have to compare, you know, for people who believe in technology. I'm the one who believes in development of technology. I'm the one who likes to use the technology. But of course, I want to be careful because I have kids. I want to think about future. What is people really thinking and why they are doing that? Why they are breaking these 5G towers? I saw this all around the world. And even in Japan, who is a really high developed country, they are already thinking about 6G. But it seems that people know something what we not talking publicly.
Well, I haven't spoke to people who have done that, so I don't know really what their arguments are. But perhaps that's a sign of desperation. People feel that they have no power because they are forcibly exposed to this radiation and they get no help from the government that should be there to safeguard their interest, not in the first hand the industry's interest, but that is not the case today. So perhaps that's a sign of the frustration that people are feeling, that there is a lawless society, because the industry has all the power and has gotten clearance for all environmental and health effects. So I don't know, maybe that's the cause, the desperation from people when they feel they have no power anymore over what they are exposed to in their own homes.
You're also mentioning all the time environment. There is not only impact on human health, there is also impact on environment. That means plant and animals.
Yes, there has been many studies showing that the disastrous effects also on plants and animals. For instance, there was a very huge compilation made by 3 American scientists 2 years ago that concluded that the effects may be very harmful to the flora and fauna, and particularly insects and birds who are very sensitive to this radiation.
Well, okay, now we are where we are now. They are trying to implement. What we can do? First, how we can protect ourselves from the present situation, for this radiation what we already exposed, for example 4G, for example Wi-Fi, and this kind of exposure? And is there anything that we can do to protect ourselves for the future exposures for this 5G technology?
Well, I think the most important thing is for people to inform themselves. That's the first step. You should be informed about the health risks. And there are many organizations over Europe working with this issue. We are now constructing an English version of our website. It's not ready yet, but it will be radiationprotection.se. And there are many other very good websites in Europe and in the US who informs about health risks from this kind of radiation. Children's Health Defense in USA and in Europe, for instance, have web pages informing about the health risks. So the first step is to inform you and to be aware of the health risks. The second step is, of course, to spread the information to other people and friends and decision makers, because there is a lack of information and we need to go around the censorship in the mainstream media. So we need to talk about the health risks with this kind of radiation to whenever we can, and spread information and form networks of people working together to inform the decision makers and the politicians and the other people about the dreadful harms of this kind of radiation. Next step to protect yourself is to become aware of your exposure in your own home and your own usage of mobile phones. We recommend that people should not use mobile phones more than very necessary short calls, and never keep the phone on the body in a pocket or so when it's on, and never hold the phone directly to the head. You should always keep a distance and preferably use the speakers when you are in communication, so you avoid putting the phone directly against the body. And when it comes to being aware of the radiation in your own home, it is quite necessary to get a meter to measure the radiation levels, because you can be exposed to high levels of radiation without being aware of it from a nearby base station or mobile phone mast, or from some technology that your neighbor has installed on the other side of the wall. We also recommend that people should use wire connection for internet communication. So you preferably do not use Wi-Fi, which sends out harmful radiation, but you use a cabled internet connection. That's some easy steps to take to protect yourself.
But in case of 5G, they will need not only towers, they will need additional stations in streets, everywhere where we need for the future, for example, these self-driving cars. In this case, we cannot protect ourselves.
Well, I think through information and public opinion, we should be able to stop this harmful development, because it will lead to many more people getting ill from the radiation exposure. So it's not a necessary development for the human health and for human society to have self-driving cars and wireless emitting cancer causing radiation everywhere around us. On the contrary, we should do everything in our possible ways to stop this harmful development.
Also, I would like to ask you, this technology needs lots of electric energy. And we know already a few years last two especially, price of energy went up. And this industry, for example, this Ericsson, what you said, they need lots of users to make profit from this technology. What we can do about this? It seems to that we are running against profit. At the same time, we have to protect our health. How to make both of these things together? Well, high cost of electricity, high cost of this technology, that means they need lots of users, at the same time a high impact on the health.
Yes, I think information is the key, and to make people and decision makers more aware of the negative sides of this development and this technology. So that's what we are working with all the time, informing the public. However, it's very difficult when the mainstream media is censoring this kind of information. But we should. That's why we need to go around the censorship and informing the public through other means. For instance, as you are doing in your podcast and in your television program. So people need to be aware that the only way to stop this harmful development is for people to take action and to start informing each other and build networks and organizations working to protect the human health and our common environment against the hazards of this new technology.
Well, that also, again, remind me on something from the last 3 years. Censorship you're mentioning, informing other people through other channels, more think about health, less thinking about profit, because it seems so that these companies are run by profit, which is logic, because they need to provide lots of money for their shareholders. And
Yes.
that's the most important goal. If cost is human health, again, they can offer us something for our health, for example, treatment. And they can earn both sides, developing new technology and providing us health services. We, as ordinary people who have to listen their promotions, it seems that we have to find our way to collect information and to spread this information around.
That is correct. That is correct. We need to have people acting more and to understand that we can't let the industry and the corrupted politicians and those politicians who only act because they possibly have been corrupted by this industry to decide over our environment and our health. We need to defend our democracy, because this is clearly a democracy issue. Should we let industry decide what we should be exposed to in our own homes, or should we have that power from the public health point of view? So it's also about defending democracy.
Yeah. It seems that democracy is again under threat of profit. Tell me, there is a new thing is coming in Europe. Sweden is not in the Eurozone. Croatia is. And they are saying that will implement digital euro. And we will have digital wallets on our phones, smartphones. But very soon we will not need even phones for using this digital ID and digital wallet for digital money. Is for this implementation necessary 5G technology?
Good question. I'm sorry I cannot answer that. I don't think so. I think previous generations of this kind of technology could work, but I'm not sure of that.
Well, I had to ask this question because this is coming soon. This digital money is coming in already in this year. Decision is coming that is next year. I'm not aware. I'm not the expert how fast it's necessary to implement 5G towers and everything else, stations, what is necessary for. But okay, this is something that we have to talk about in the future. For sure, both of these things looking for me for something that I'm already calling this total control society. What do you think about this?
Yes, it will be. This technology will give the powers the possibility to more control and more supervision, and that's not a good thing in a democracy if you want to maintain democracy. So that's also another aspect of this rollout, that there will be more possibility to control and supervision.
Okay, that means surveillance is one of the goals. But we spoke already. You mentioned something that this is connected with the future plans. That means they will not stop with 5G. They have additional plans to implement something even much more stronger, for example, like 6G. Can you tell us something about this?
Yes, but before that, they are planning to roll out 5G Step 2, which is the millimeter wave around 26 gigahertz, which they will start to roll out, at least in Sweden, from 2025. And that will lead to another probably doubling, a huge increase of harmful radiation exposure. And there are, just like this first step with 5G that is rolled out at the frequency of 3.5 gigahertz, there are no studies showing at all that this exposure, the combination of 4G, 5G, at 3.5 gigahertz and then at the additional 26 gigahertz will not cause health harms to the environment, to living beings like birds and insects. There are no studies whatsoever showing that this exposure is safe. There are no studies showing that the ICNIRP limits, that the ICNIRP guidelines, which the European Commission will adopt with the help of their very biased expert report, are safe for human health. There are no studies showing that any human can tolerate those high levels that the ICNIRP limits are allowing. So that's a shocking reality. It's a shocking truth, and people need to be aware that they are treated like guinea pigs, like lab rats, because the health effects will be studied afterwards. That shouldn't be the case in a democratic society. We should be sure that when people are forcibly exposed to something, that it's safe, that it's not harmful.
Yeah, you mentioned...
And I think most people agree on that. I think most people in a democratic society would agree on that principle, that they should not. But the problem is that the people are not being told the truth about the harmful effects of this radiation. They are misled and told that experts from the World Health Organization, the European Commission, etc., have concluded that there are no health risks. And that is of course true, because those expert evaluations are beneficial to the telecommunications and made by experts who are biased and don't tell the truth about what we know about the harms of this radiation.
Yeah, you mentioned lab rats, and that reminds me of something I read one paper a few days ago about this Danish paper, and they saw that 30% of administered vaccines in Denmark was placebo, and they conclude that it seems to that we were really victims of trials of pharmaceutical industry, but phase 3 trials without informed consent. And this looks the similar thing. They are making some trials, but they are not asking us if we are willing to participate.
Yes.
Okay, let me ask you something else for the end, because it's important, because lots of people are talking, and I don't want to talk about anything that I cannot prove. Of course, first we have to have some assumptions, then after that we are looking for the proof. Is there any connection between this pandemic, exactly this microwave syndromes and flu-like syndromes, what we suffered the last 3 years, or exactly lots of people suffered during pandemic?
Yes, there is. Unfortunately, there is some connection. Many symptoms that can be caused by this radiation are similar to flu-like symptoms, and also similar to those symptoms described as long COVID. Then the symptoms, the list of symptoms are to 90% the same. So what we are concerned about is that many people who have been diagnosed with COVID or long COVID, they could have been in reality ill from this kind of radiation exposure. And since the medical community, the physicians at the hospitals all over Europe, they are also, like the public and the decision makers, they are disinformed about the health effects from this kind of radiation. So they are not aware that this radiation can cause those list of symptoms that are described as long COVID. So people don't get the right advice and not the right recommendations from the medical doctors, because they are simply not aware of the radiation issue and the possible health effects from radiation exposure. That's also a tragedy, because people are not getting the right advice and treatment.
That means that we have to also teach our doctors something new. Well, Mona,
yes.
It seems that this topic is something what demands more investigation in the future. And for sure I will do it. As you said, there is a censorship in the mainstream media, and that's why this alternative media are now becoming more and more popular, because nobody really trusts anymore to these promotions and propaganda what is coming from mainstream media. Thank you for your time, and please investigate more. I'll put in the links below this video, this show, I'll put all the connections to your webpage, to your work, and you continue with your work, and I'll continue to inform people to think over it, to get themselves informed for their health and for their future, and especially for future for their kids.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Evo, dragi narode, otvorili smo dakle još jednu temu koja vrlo vjerojatno se... Dakle, otvorili smo temu implementacije 5G tehnologije, koja čini se, evo kao što kaže moja gošća današnja, nije istražena. Ne radi se istraživanja kakav utjecaj imaju na ljudsko zdravlje. Gledao sam nekoliko saslušanja u Senatu američkom gdje konkretno pitaju gospodu iz te industrije koliko ste novaca uložili u protekloj godini za provjeru utjecaja na ljudsko zdravlje. Odgovor je bio ništa. Dakle, vođeni su profitom. Njih zanima što prije implementaciju nove tehnologije, profit, a ne zanima ih u toj mjeri koliko će to imati utjecaj ili posljedice dugoročne na zdravlje ili na sve ostalo što ta industrija ima iza sebe. Stoga je potrebno da ovu temu otvaramo. Dakle, vi znate da u Hrvatskoj je naš premijer jasno rekao da će Hrvatska biti prva prototip zemlja, nije upotrijebio riječ prototip, ali rekao je prva zemlja koja će uvesti potpunu digitalizaciju. Digitalizaciju u svakom pogledu. Znamo da se kod nas proizvodi i investira u proizvodnju, tih što sam spomenuo, samo vozeći taksija. Oni, koliko ja znam, možda sam krivo informiran, zahtijevaju implementaciju 5G tehnologije. Dakle, potrebno je velika brza izmjena informacija kako bi se tehnologija mogla upotrijebiti, a posljedice na zdravlje ili što prvo mora doći? Mora prvo doći implementacija tehnologije, tek onda proizvodnja tih automobila, ali istraživat ćemo. Nisam tu da zaključujem, tu sam da postavljam pitanja, da razgovaram s ljudima koji više o tome znaju, da se sam informira i zbog sebe i zbog svog zdravlja i svih vas koji slušate ovu emisiju, i zato ćemo ovu temu i dalje obrađivati. Postavljat ćemo pitanja, evo kao što ste vidjeli, postavio sam sva moguća trenutna pitanja koja su aktualna, ali imamo još puno posla pred sobom. Ako ste zadovoljni sa poslom koji radimo, ako ste zadovoljni sa gostima koje vam dovodimo, nagradite nas, počastite nas kavicom, puno će nam značiti jer podržavate naš time rad, ocjenjujete kako to radimo, a to je najvažnija ocjena koju želimo dobiti. Hvala vam lijepo na pažnji i vidimo se uskoro u novoj epizodi Slobodnog podcasta.
Nitko vas neće natjerati da se poklonite zvijeri, učinit ćete to svojevoljno, odbacujući vjeru. Bićete laka meta za zvijer, jer se niste podredili vjeri. Ako se ne podredite vjeri, podredit ćete se zvijeri. Toliko ćete se suobličiti sa ovim svijetom, da nećete ni prepoznati da ste u zabludi. Biće to najveća demonska prevara ikada i pravedno zaslužena osuda nad nepokajanim grešnicima.
Gdje su svi?